What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we are going to be comparing two of the top mid-range smartphones out right now for 2022. The new Google Pixel 6a and the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Both these phones retail for $449. They're positioned as sort of the bang for your buck value alternative to the more expensive flagships from their respective brands, and they each offer a handful of unique specs and features that might make one a better option over the other, depending on your needs. So in this video, I'm going to fill you in on everything you need to know about these two phones. I'll break down what's similar, what's different, the pros and cons of each, but if you just want the 20-second summary, the Pixel 6a's strengths are its processor, its software experience, and its camera by far. The A53 5G has an SD card slot and a higher storage option, a better fingerprint sensor, 120Hz display, and a bigger battery with a slightly faster charging. So take all those things for what they're worth, but let's dive a little deeper now and see what these phones have to offer. Physically, I think it's pretty obvious. So the Pixel 6a is the smaller of the two. It's a fairly compact 6.1-inch smartphone. That's the screen size corner to corner. The A53 is a 6.5-inch device, more of a standard size nowadays. They each get a hole punch selfie camera at the top, slim but noticeable side bezels, and a subtle bottom chin. Though if you want to be precise, the 85.5% screen-to-body ratio on the A53 is slightly better than the Pixel's 83% screen-to-body ratio. And I do think the borders and bezels are just a little thicker on the Pixel. In the hand, like I mentioned, the Pixel is more or less a small device by today's standards at least. It's a bit more comfortable to hold, a little easier to stretch and maneuver in your hand. There's nothing wrong with the slightly bigger A53, of course. It's the same size and form factor as most Samsung and Android devices in general nowadays, and I think people are used to that. But if you specifically want a smaller device, there aren't many out there, but the Pixel 6a I think fits that description. Around back, while the fit and finish appear to be different, both these phones do rock an all-plastic rear cover. The Pixel has a glossy, shiny plastic, the A53 is a soft touch matte, and obviously they have very different takes on their camera setups as well. The A53 is certainly more traditional, while the Pixel gives you that very polarizing camera bar and black stripe from last year's Pixel 6 Pro. The frame of the Pixel 6a is a matte aluminum. The A53 is made from a polished metal-like material. Similar feel, just a different finish, of course. The A53 is a little heavier, but all in all, there's no real advantage or perk either way with the materials on either device. A couple of other things worth mentioning: both phones are IP67 water and dust resistance, so they should be fairly durable, and neither device offers any wireless charging or reverse wireless charging features. Taking a quick look around at everything else, nothing on the left side of the A53, but on the Pixel at the bottom you have just your SIM card tray, no SD card support on this phone. The A53 has its dual SIM and SD card tray at the bottom there, and I think expandable storage is a big perk for this phone. On the right side, similar volume and power buttons just set up opposite of one another, and back at the bottom, USB-C port in the middle on both, alongside speaker and microphone cutouts. There is a secondary speaker on each phone inside the earpiece at the top, and around back, dual lens camera setup on the Pixel, 4 camera lenses on the A53, which I'll talk more about in a bit. Underneath the display, both phones do offer a fingerprint sensor, and with this I've personally found the A53 to be faster and more accurate as I wake, scan, and unlock the phone. The Pixel almost always requires a tap, hold, and wait. The A53 is that touch and go sort of setup, and I'm honestly surprised that Google didn't improve this a bit more from last year's Pixel 6 Pro, but alas, it seems to be about the same, and it is no doubt slower than the competition. When it comes to the displays, both these phones offer great viewing experiences for your money, but the A53 offers a couple of things here that do give it a clear advantage. The smaller 6.1-inch screen on the Pixel is a very respectable 2400 by 1080 resolution OLED panel that packs in around 429 pixels per inch. There's no issues with the resolution. It looks very sharp, especially at this size, and I think it's plenty bright and colorful as well. But it's only a 60Hz screen. The A53, on the other hand, with its 6.5-inch display, has the trifecta of features: 2400 by 1080 resolution, Super AMOLED display, and up to a 120Hz high refresh rate. That to me is not just what separates the A53 from the Pixel, but it's also what makes the A53 compete with similar Samsung flagships. That high refresh rate is a high-end feature, but we've seen even 90Hz screens on budget mid-range devices recently, so I'm surprised Google opted to stick with 60Hz here. It's just not as fast, not as smooth, and not as responsive as the A53 when it comes to your taps and touches. The phone itself isn't slow, it's just the display display and how things are shown. A little choppier, a little less responsive, and I think a lot of people nowadays are used to high refresh rate screens in this $400 to $500 price range. So not having it or going back to a 60Hz screen is a miss. Like I said, both these phones in general have great viewing experiences. Bold, bright OLED screens that deliver punchy and very vibrant looks for all your content. Plenty bright, though I think the A53 gets a little brighter. It just seems to me that Google likely could have brought a high refresh rate screen as the icing on the cake, even 90Hz, but for some reason they chose not to, and that's a real shame. Where the Pixel does have an advantage though is with the out loud listening experience. Both these phones have dual stereo speakers, one at the bottom and a secondary one in the earpiece. Great add-ons for these phones in this price range, a personal favorite feature of mine, but comparatively, the Pixel 6a sounds louder, more crisp, more clear. It's the speaker setup that I prefer. And here's a sample from each so you can decide for yourself.
Stress is getting just a little bit lower. Mine's getting just a little bit closer. Find somebody in my life that can make it for. Hey, getting stuck to the race with you. For a sleeping cruise, no. Stress is getting just a little bit lower. Mine's getting just a little bit closer. Find somebody in my life that can make it for. I've been lost, I'll be found in the dark, yeah. Way out in the crowd, feeling open.
As far as the internal specs and performance, I think this is pretty clear. The Pixel 6a is powered by a flagship processor, while the A53 has a mid-tier chipset inside. And the speed and performance tests definitely indicate that. The Pixel 6a received Google's own Tensor chipset, seemingly the same one from last year's Pixel 6 Pro, along with 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. The A53 is powered by a still very good Exynos 1280, Samsung's own relatively new processor, but again, a lesser tier spec, and the option of either 4, 6, or 8 gigs of RAM, and 128 or 256 gigs of storage. Here are the updated Geekbench scores for those of you who like to see the numbers, and like I said, I think things are pretty clear here. The Pixel 6a is no doubt the more powerful, more capable device by a noticeable margin, and some side-by-side speed tests here definitely confirm that. The best comparison I could make, I think, is if the A53 had, say, a Snapdragon 800 series processor inside, then it might be a fair fight. But out of everything here, besides maybe its camera, this is where you're getting the utmost value in going with the Pixel 6a. On top of that, you're also, of course, getting Google's own software experience and all the perks and features that go along with it, including being first for updates and multiple years of support. Now, Samsung is no slouch with their Android experience, usually 3 or 4 years of support. The higher-end A-series phones have been getting updates of their own fairly quickly and often, but Google's Android experience is one of the main reasons why people gravitate towards the Pixels. And I think paired with the flagship caliber processor here, the Pixel 6a has a clear advantage, not just over the A53, but over probably every other phone in this price range. When it comes to the batteries and charging and longevity, the smaller 6a does have a smaller battery, about 4,410 milliamps in size versus 5,000 milliamps in the A53, and the A53 also supports faster charging by a little bit, 25 watt wired charging versus 18 watt for the Pixel. But there are a few other factors that impact battery life. Running the A53 at 120 Hz, for example, will be less efficient. It'll drain the battery faster. On both phones, they have their own battery saver options, but I think Google's Pixel-specific super battery saver options can make this phone last longer if you need it, up to 72 hours. Samsung has never claimed something like that with the A53. For me, longevity is the most important factor, so I'd rather go with the Pixel here, but there's nothing negative about the A53's power setup at all. It's a full day phone and then some. The only negative for both devices really is just the lack of any wireless charging, which is still a bit of a bummer. Finally, while it might seem pretty easy to just automatically declare the Pixel the winner in the camera department, the A53 actually offers a great camera setup of its own with surprisingly good real-world images, and a few advantages as well. Hardware-wise, the Pixel does still use the same 12.2 megapixel main lens that Google has been recycling year after year, alongside the slightly better 12 megapixel 114 degree ultra-wide from the Pro. The A53's quad lens setup is made up of 64 megapixel main lens, a 12 megapixel 123 degree ultra-wide, and 5 megapixel macro and depth lenses. For the selfie cameras, interestingly enough, the 8 8 megapixel shooter on the Pixel seems measly compared to the 32 megapixel on the A53, and right away I should mention the A53 can shoot 4K video with its selfie camera while the Pixel cannot. Inside the camera apps, both phones offer their own Google-focused and Samsung-focused features and add-ons. There isn't a whole lot that explicitly separates them. Most of the shooting modes and features are just presented differently. You'll find a couple extra filters and things on the A53 that Samsung adds that I don't think are necessarily valuable. Single take, the food filter, fun mode, even the dedicated macro lens to me isn't that important. The Pixel has a few less gimmicks, more just the usual camera suite of features. Though to be honest, I don't necessarily think either offers anything in particular feature-wise that makes it stand out. You really just have to judge the raw pictures. And starting with the selfie camera, surprisingly, I actually like the A53 here. To me, the selfie shots on the Samsung are more colorful, more pleasing, and they seem to capture more detail too, which is odd considering the Pixel is usually great at that, especially with post-processing. But the selfie camera's hardware, I think, just isn't that great. With the rear lens setup though, to me, the Pixel looks the best, both in its color accuracy, it's not as overly saturated and colorful versus the A53 here, and with the amount of detail that's shown in each shot. On top of that, the Pixel's edge detection is better, the exposure is more balanced. I'm a little washed out on the A53. There's much wider dynamic range on the 6A. This is absolutely what makes the Pixel stand out year over year. It's a top-tier picture taker once again, and in this price range, I genuinely don't think there's anything that outshoots it. So to sum everything up, if you want expandable storage, a 120Hz display, better fingerprint sensor, slightly bigger screen, and the Samsung ecosystem, you'll get the A53. If you want a flagship processor paired with Google's own Android experience and the best camera setup you can buy at this price point, then the Pixel 6a is the phone for you. That's the way I would sum things up, but what do you guys think? Which device would you personally prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.